Ah, you're back. Good. Sit down, get comfortable, and don't worry about the feeling that someone might be listening from just out of sight. Tonight I'm going to tell you a true story, one so quiet and patient that it didn't need ghosts, demons, or legends to become horrifying. Because sometimes the scariest thing isn't what kills you, but what stays behind afterward. Deep in the Bavarian countryside, hidden by thick forests, stood a lonely farmstead called Hinterkaifeck. In the early spring of 1922, the isolation the family lived in began to feel different. The silence grew heavy, as if it was no longer their own. It started with footprints in the fresh snow, leading from the edge of the woods directly to the house. But strangely, there were no tracks leading back, as if whatever came from the forest never planned to leave. Soon after, things inside the house began to change. Keys would vanish without a trace. Tools in the barn were moved from their usual places. Late at night, the family dog would bark violently at the attic, its frantic howls echoing through the cold, dark house. When someone finally forced themselves to go upstairs, they found nothing but an empty, unbearably cold space. The family told their neighbors about the strange noises they heard above their heads, the unnerving feeling of being watched while they slept, but their fears were dismissed. It's easy to ignore a warning when nothing has happened yet. Then came the night of March 31st. One by one, members of the family were lured into the barn. There, in the darkness, they were brutally murdered with a mattock, their bodies then carefully arranged. There were no sounds of a struggle, no desperate attempts to escape, just methodical violence carried out by someone who knew the farm intimately. But the killer didn't stop there. Inside the house, the rest of the family, including a small child and a maid who had just arrived that very day, were murdered in their beds. But what happened next is what chills investigators to this day. The killer stayed. For several days after the murders, smoke was seen rising from the farmhouse chimney. The livestock were fed and the cows were milked. Meals were cooked and eaten. Neighbors saw movement around the property and simply assumed the family was going about their daily routine, completely unaware that the routine now belonged to someone else. When the authorities finally discovered the scene, they found half-eaten food on the table and beds that had been slept in. Signs of a calm, deliberate existence right beside the bodies of the deceased. It was as if the murderer hadn't just killed the family, but had briefly tried to replace them. No suspect was ever identified. No motive was ever found. And no one can explain why someone would choose to live there, alone with the dead, for days on end. The farm was eventually demolished, but some locals say the surrounding forest still feels wrong, holding a silence that learned how easy it is to stay unseen and how long it can wait. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to follow and hit that like button. After all, you never know what's watching from the quiet places. Thanks for listening.